This episode is sponsored by GoWOD, the official mobility partner of the Noble CrossFit Games. GoWOD, the mobility app that is used by top CrossFit athletes Matt Fraser and Justin Medeiros. Take the mobility test for free on the GoWOD app. Once done, GoWOD generates for you super efficient mobilization protocols that are adapted to your mobility weaknesses, movements of your workouts, and available at any time. GoWOD has been designed for athletes with one goal: to allow you to mobilize in a personalized and super simple way, avoiding all the guesswork to help you perform at your best on every single CrossFit session. Get the app for free. Welcome back, everyone, to the CrossFit Games podcast. I'm your host, Chase Ingraham, with Adrian Conway and Margaux Alvarez. You guys have been so kind to join us for the last 2 days as we look towards the final day of the 2022 quarterfinals, as we await for the update of the leaderboard, which should be in about 10 to 15 minutes. And I can't wait to see how our bets pay off of these times for event 5.
Me either. I'm excited to see it. I mean, I got to watch some attempts firsthand this morning.
Oh, you did? That's right. That's right.
Oh man, let me tell you, it was a high stress environment this morning. You could cut it with a knife, to say the least.
Man, I was scouring the leaderboard last night and just seeing who was on the bubble, who's either in that cut line to get to semifinals, and looking at those top 5 athletes. I think it's more pride than anything on the line to say win the quarterfinals in your continental region. But I mean, that's why we do half the things we do as competitors. Margaux, say you're taking the quarterfinals, you're in the top 5, and you have a shot for a first place position. Does that add a little extra juice to that event 5 for you?
I would say so, yes. I think it's, like you said, to win it for your continent and to be able to have that kind of underneath your belt, that gives you a little bit more confidence or reassurance of what you've been doing, not only for those events, but also as you go into the next stage where now you're going to be in person with everyone, depending on the event that you go at. So I think it definitely gives a little more pep in your step. And obviously well-deserving. But again, doesn't mean you can't just rest on your laurels or hang back, because there's people behind you, 2, 3, 4, even the lower spot, that'll be vying for the spot that's actually going to get you to the game. So it's something to definitely enjoy, celebrate, but then continue on the path to the next stage.
And I think it was fun too, was what event 5 was or is for the last day of competition, and how fun it is that this is the final event for athletes, giving one more opportunity. Because look, you could put any order you wanted to, but this is classic. Like, this is old school regional days, fast and furious finish. Adrian, you said you got to watch this go down today after, we had some speculations of what we think would go down based off what this was. Now actually getting to see it, how did it live up to the billing?
It's exciting. And I'll be honest, like the workout in itself, this workout by itself, the 30-calorie row for men and women, the 20 burpee box jump overs, and then into the 10 snatches, of course, that are varying loads, 185 for the guys and 135 for the ladies. With the 7-minute cap, it's doable for the vast majority of the athletes, of course, that are expecting to advance forward. They're not just going through the motions and hoping to hit a 10 snatch. They're trying to do it in such a way that they're starting their snatches, but they're really thinking about rep 10 right out the gate. And so to watch that take place and to watch the urgency that they executed with this morning, my hat goes off to everybody, because it is highly stressful. And I say that because the way CrossFit designed this particular workout, where you've built up a ton of stress, one, throughout the weekend, but also even in the work prior to the 10 snatches, your heart rate's high. Your focus has to be ultimately extremely high, even if this weight for you is 65% of your 1 rep max. Although there's a lot of the community where 185 and 135 particularly might be 85% or above that are still out there throwing down this thing. So the workout in itself is amazing, but I'll say that what adds to that is, of course, the pressure that surmounts throughout the previous 3 days. Where are my scores? Where am I sitting? Where do I need to be? How will so-and-so do in this area? What about so-and-so that I know from down the street and around the corner, right? Who already said they got this time. So it's great to even just see all this stuff unfold firsthand. But I'll be honest with you, as a coach, I'm glad it's done.
I can imagine the stress from the coaching side. And the other fun part about this, as you said, Adrian, is that when you're looking at the top 10% qualifying from all these different continental boundaries, is that you're going to have so much variety of how this even plays out athlete to athlete. We have athletes that can full send this and just see how fast they can actually go. To the other side is like, yes, this might be 85 to 90+%. There's also a lot of athletes that this is outside of their 1 rep max potential. And so now this is a completely different. It's like, can I just get through the row and the burpee box jump overs with an opportunity to maybe PR lift? And I feel like there's no better time and there's no better opportunity to PR lifts or do some personal bests or things than in a competition setting. And, say semifinals aside, Margaux, when you look at something like the Open, when you have something like this for the quarterfinals, watching this for the second year, how much or what is your feelings on this new quarterfinals format for the game season?
I think it gives obviously a different challenge to the athletes where you're not having maybe the adrenaline or that community push. I mean, I think of regionals and how it was where you have everyone together, you have a little bit extra drive or motivation or excitement come to you because you have the community cheering you on. It's not just yourself in the gym during the Open. So it's a little different where maybe athletes that enjoyed that or thrived on that might be maybe something that's a little different or difficult. But as it goes into the second year, it's something that they're learning and adapting. And I know of some athletes that I've seen out there, they did get to PR on the other total. They hit, all PRs for all 3 lifts, and that's exciting. I think there is still that element of adrenaline of, this is the time to execute and have everything you've done over the year come together. And even though there is the next stage, I think it's pulling some of those elements from the old regional flow and how we had things to this next stage where you can still tap into that and use it to your advantage, but also know that you can't just rely on that to have a PR or to get through a workout all unbroken and however the strategy is. But I think it's finding what pieces and what slices of things that you've done in the past and pull that to now. For those that are relatively new and didn't have that experience, for them, it might be a little bit more like the Open where they're like, all right, this is just the next stage. We're a little bit more higher competition, different style workouts, more elements included in it. But I think, again, no matter where you are at, you're able to learn something about yourself so that you can take this in your comfort of your own in gym and then take it to the environment where you maybe don't necessarily have all that control, but you then have the community behind you.
I like that. Adrian, a lot of discussion was the Open format this year and last year. We have 3 weeks, which 3 tests is really limited as far as how much you can throw at a worldwide community. And Justin Berg and Adrian Bozin has been on record. It says, listen, the stages of the game season will be more tailored to the demographic taking the test, as well as be tested to get the demographic to the next level. So the Open test is going to look vastly different as far as difficulty, skills, and weights, say taking the next 10% to the quarterfinals. The test in the quarterfinals will be appropriate to the demographic as well as appropriate to move on those to semifinals. Now that we have the quarterfinals programming in front of us, what are your thoughts as far as how the first 2 steps has aligned as we look towards semifinals?
I really believe that they've pieced them together very well. I think that we saw this last year, even thinking ahead to semis where we know CrossFit will have some governing control of 1 or 2 of the events, I believe, going forward into each semi. I think they really got the long-term test in mind. And I think that's something that, even with the consideration of the transition away from Dave, that they're going to do awesome with. I really believe that there were a lot of people that had a lot of things to say and a lot of opinions about the 3-week test of the Open. But even when we think about CrossFit from a developmental standpoint, we think about the pyramid, and we think about what lays the foundation, of course, nutrition, but then next is metabolic conditioning. We don't really need to get too fancy and too sexy and too high of skills to really test that at a very high level. And then that gives us an opportunity in instances like this with the quarterfinals and then into semifinals to really test the loads and the high skills. So I think we're seeing that happen. I thought they did a great job. And ultimately, it's unfortunate, but we've got some really fit people in our history of the sport, like Tia Claire Toomey, Rich Froning, Matt Frazier, that always prove to us that the cream rises to the top, no matter what kind of excuses we want to make about the programming. So if people don't like it, be fitter.
God, I love when I get to ask questions like this. And for those of you guys who are not aware of the theoretical hierarchy of athletic development that they teach in the level 1, it's this baseline pyramid of almost how you prioritize developing your fitness as you go from, basic fitness to the sport element. And as you said, Adrian, the baseline is taking care of your nutrition, and then it's working metabolic conditioning, and then it's working on your gymnastics, which is strengthening your body in space. And then you see weightlifting and throwing and object lifting. And at the very top of the pyramid, you see sport. And I feel like everyone wants to take that weightlifting one and put it down at the bottom where the nutrition one is. And the reality is, and we're looking at the top 10% of taking the Open into the quarterfinals of all these continental boundaries, is that if you took care of your nutrition and you worked on your metabolic conditioning and your gymnastics, you're going to move on. You don't need that last component. Maybe some people got left out because they didn't get the big lift in the Open, but if you check the first three boxes, then I think your fitness would have been rounded or well-rounded enough. And the test, in my opinion, were good enough to get the next 10% to the quarterfinals. Am I saying it was the most complete test of fitness? Absolutely not. But that's what the season is supposed to be. That's definitely what the games, I would say semifinals, even quarters, right? Quarters, semis, and games should be a more well-rounded test of fitness because that funneling system is so tight. But when you move from, say, in the United States, males, 70,000 to find the next 7,000, you don't need to be that wild and crazy as far as balance of the programming. So I'm totally with you when you say that. Quarterfinals itself, Adrian, you've been in the box, you've been coaching athletes. To me, this was surprisingly a very fun addition to the game season, especially I feel like this year with the programming. Last year it wasn't as fun. The programming was a little aggressive for a certain demographic of athletes, but this year I feel like, wow, what a jump we made from year one to year two. How fun has it been this year with the quarterfinals?
Oh, it's been tremendous. I mean, we've had an opportunity here with the athletes that I coach through True Fitness. We don't have a 15-foot rope at our gym. So, and I'm using this as an example, but we got to caravan up to Wasatch CrossFit, use another local affiliate that we're really tight with, and collaborate with them and run heats of this workout, which just added more to that local community feel. And I thought, what a better opportunity to do this than quarterfinals. I mean, it's people that are taking their fitness a bit more serious than necessarily the everyday CrossFitter that walks through the door. But it was great to get those people together to compete, to have a fun time. And then even in conversation, just like you mentioned, it seemed like this year the test was complete for this stage, but also not so high volume that kind of deterred people from the experience. And I had a conversation with someone that used to be more on the competitive side and now more of the day-to-day, but still have the fitness to qualify for quarterfinals. And he shared with me that, this year was so much more fun simply because he's not as devastatingly sore and wrecked as he was last year trying to participate. So he's like, it even got his juices flowing again. And he's like, maybe I'll try to lift a little bit more next year in preparation for this and be ready. Maybe we'll see where I'm at fitness-wise to see if I can still throw my hat in the ring and chase a semifinal. But it was awesome. It was fun. We got the local community involved, and I thought they did a great job.
Margaux, for you, is you got a different perspective of this season as a whole, being out to watch the Open, to see what the quarterfinals are doing. What's it like been for you seeing these events come out this year for the quarterfinals as opposed to last year?
It's been exciting. I think I definitely lean towards these ones more than the ones last year. Well-roundedness, I think it's great, but also kind of what Adrian spoke to the individual he referenced is, maybe not as wrecked, but I think also you're showcasing your fitness versus running it into the ground. And I think as an athlete, that's partaking, that's doing this, you want to be able to obviously execute and hit your goals. And it's sometimes tough or challenging if you're completely wrecked or you're running to the ground where you feel like, oh man, the thoughts of what if kind of creeping to your head. It's like, if I wouldn't have been so sore, but that's the situation. So you have to take what you have. And then on the outside for myself looking in, seeing these workouts, it's like, oh, that's like, and like I said, we talked about this workout, specifically event 5, kind of thinking how it was like similar to regionals. So for me, looking in, it kind of reminds me of my experience and what I went through and some of the feelings that I had. And I imagine some of the athletes are having some of those feelings, obviously wanting to do well, but looking at all the programming this year compared to last year, I think I'm favoring more this year. And I think just like anything else, as you get more time under your belt, some more experiences, you're able to kind of figure out the layers of the pieces that you're putting together and say, hey, what works? Or this worked last year. This didn't work last year. Let's fine tune that tune that and apply that for this year. And then obviously after this year, they'll have a little bit more, another year under the belt. So then things can be tweaked or changed for next year, next quarterfinals. And I think as more time goes by, not only will the behind the scenes get a little more streamlined, but also the athletes figuring out how they want to attack it. What's the best approach? I think some people said, they did it all in one day, or they did it over 2 days.
Yeah.
Figuring out what works best for you ultimately will be the key to have your best performance. And that just comes with experience.
Now, we have reviewed the events that we had quarterfinals, but just to give an example, we'll go through each event really quickly. We have a couple more minutes before the leaderboard should be updated unofficially. But what we're talking about, things that making it more accessible for the everyday athlete qualified for the quarterfinals. Because let's be honest, qualifying in the quarterfinals in the top 10% coming out of the Open, you're still going to have a lot of novice amateur athletes that have the availability to move to the next level. And you don't need to create a crazy hard test to be a crazy effective test. And so, for example, last year in event 1, you had strict handstand push-ups right out the gate, which really shut down a lot of athletes that were novice to the sport, which didn't make it fun to get there. Here, you don't have strict handstand push-ups until the end of event number 1. You have deficit handstand push-ups right there in the middle, but those 30 regular kipping, right? That's a big chunk for novice athletes, yet it's still doable and it should still challenge you on that level. If you look at event number 2, when you had something that was the ring muscle up, well, just like we've seen in the Open in the past, what did Dave used to do? He used to put it at the very end, right? That's your treat if you've got the fitness to get there, and then the gymnastic skills at the end. But starting with single leg squats, 30 GHD sit-ups, I thought this was a much better combo than, say, the 60 GHDs right off the bat that we had last year, which is a big chunk for someone who hasn't really done GHD sit-ups. Moving over to event 3 as another example with the rope climbs and the shuttle runs, right? You got a rope climb, you got a shuttle run, you got a wall ball target. It's an ascending ladder, so it's going to get gradually more difficult. It allows more people to play. Everyone can do a shuttle run. You're not necessarily limited by the space you have. Now, you might be limited about getting a rope, but Adrian, as you said, I mean, we've had people come from all over Dallas because we happen to have 15 foot rope climbs. And that was so cool because I don't know how different it is from, say, the Open during games times, and we had regionals, like that was still a very tribal time, right? We're talking about like not trusting anyone. That's BS. That's BS. What it is about the quarterfinal system is that's not really there anymore because it's so widespread as far as the qualification process. And then event 4, look, last year we had a 4 front squat, which when you take thousands and thousands of people taking the test, that is a very big outlier, kind of a meathead lift for 4 reps. And there's a lot of skews. But when you have something like this, you got the clean, which is, you have dynamic barbell movement in a classic weightlifting sense. You have a bench press, which allows those strength athletes they get their piece. And then you have that overhead squat, which is just that ultimate test of, I would almost say, athletic strength. I don't know if that's the appropriate, help me get through that, but like these are so different. We'll just say this is a very diverse strength test with the clean, the grunt work bench press, and then that overhead squat it's a lift you can't fake. How about that? Absolutely. It's a lift you can't fake. And I think that all together is a great thing. And as we said on top, set the 5th event, we've gone through that, but just to give a better perspective of the balance that they've had so far, I think it's been pretty cool to see.
Couldn't agree more.
So waiting for the board to update as we're getting set to see who's advancing unofficially to the semifinals. I did have one question for you guys as we wait for that. So as we have the quarters coming to a close by the end of the day today, I want to look forward towards the semifinals. And Adrian, you mentioned this, is that going forward for the programming, CrossFit is going to program 2 events for every semifinal. So every semifinal is going to have the same 2 events, and I think they're going to make sure that they have the same number too. So say CrossFit designates everyone must do 6, here's 2, and here's the outline for 4. I'll give you guys this question. There's a lot of different tests in there, strengths tests, endurance tests, there's finals, there's startings, there's benchmark tests we've seen. What two types of events do you think would be more appropriate for CrossFit to dictate to these semifinals? With that, keep in mind. So, just to simulate some conversation, is like, for example, should CrossFit program the handstand walk event so that people don't get too cute there, or should CrossFit program the 20-minute plus one? So, when you guys are mulling around your head, Adrian, I'll come to you first. Is that what two types or categories would you like to see CrossFit make, I would say, the same for all semifinals?
That's a great question, and I think it's certainly something that we've got to continue to talk about and explore. And I'm excited to just see what they do with it this year.
Same.
In my opinion, it seems as though it would be most appropriate for them to understand first what's going to really be tested at the games. And if they want to see something very high level, for example, handstand walking on an obstacle course with other elements, that's still something that we haven't seen much of at the games. They like to more recently in the years to do that as like a separate skill event. But if that's something that they want to see, well, I think we should certainly be testing handstand walking in some capacity as a prerequisite. So for them to have the understanding, if it's like, hey, we're not going to have as much of an emphasis on running this year, which we all know that's probably not the case at the games. We're going to run a lot in many different ways. But then maybe they front load and have everyone run more than 5K, 6K at a regional because they want the fittest to prove that, but they don't need it as a piece of the puzzle then at the CrossFit Games. So for me, it's like, oh man, it really is, of course, in all of their control. I believe that from a overall programming perspective, we're going to get a great mixture of high skills and also like moderate to heavy loads, because that's what draws us to semifinals. That's what packs the seats in the puts the butts in the stands. Yeah. So I almost think it's almost important for CrossFit to focus specifically around the skills that they want to test in the future and the modalities that they want to test in the future regards to, a lot of times monostructural movements.
Margaux, what are your thoughts on CrossFit taking more of a interactive role in the programming for semifinals?
I think it's good. I think what Adrian was saying is kind of like a layering piece, right? Like, what are you going to have at the games? What's going to be forecasted? So maybe taking a step back and saying, what do we want to put in? What do they want as their role to put in? I think that it's something that should be part of it, if that's what we're looking at. In terms of, the movements and modalities or what we're looking at. If you look at what we see at the games, typically or usually over the years, do we take a variation of that, like some sort of longer run, 5K, 7K, whatever it might be. Also, odd object, we have something unique and different always at the games, usually released, obviously closer to the events. But if we had something like that, like I think of the sandbag, I love the sandbag. I personally love odd objects. And I think that's something that's more relatable to transferability outside. Like if I do, sandbag training in the gym, then that's going to translate for myself moving cases of line, for work. So if I'm looking as an athlete and I come to the stage of the finals at the games, what kind of odd object, whether it's a wheelbarrow or a yoke or sandbags or, bags filled with water, whatever it might be, taking some sort of element or piece of that, showing it or having it programmed, I think that kind of gives the ability of people like what's coming. It gets them curious to say what's going to be coming down the pipeline that will possibly show up here, and I'm ready for it. And if CrossFit has a part of that, then it's like there's this consistency again, year after year, as we get more years under the belt, not only in the quarterfinals, but semifinals and then eventually the games.
I like it. For myself, I'm looking at one that would be more fun and one that I feel like there's a lot. And we talked about the variability of a strength test and what that can mean. And so for me, I would actually like HQ to dictate what the strength test is going to be. Because if you look at semifinal to semifinal, say this semifinal over here, their strength event is a max deadlift. But this semifinal over here, their strength event is a 1-rep max snatch. Those are completely different strength tests. Like those do not test the same thing whatsoever. So categorically, it's not, okay, just make sure you guys have a max lift. I would love for CrossFit to define what that is as far as semifinal to semifinal. The other thing I would like them to dictate is what the final is going to be. I want the final event to be the same final across all semifinals. So for me,
love that.
Right? And then the other four, like, hey, here's your range, here's your rep scheme. Like, do what you guys want to do here, but we're going to determine what the strength test should be, so it's even across the semifinals, and then what the final's going to be for all semifinals. That's kind of what I'm looking at. All right, I believe
I agree with that. I think that.
Okay, Margaux, go ahead.
No, obviously, I think the consistency across the board, especially with the strength lifts and the final, would be super important.
All right, I believe we have an updated leaderboard. So before we jump into there, we want to thank one of our presenting sponsors, Monster Hydro. Formulated for those who crave flavor without the sacrifice and energy without the crash. Zero Sugar Monster Energy Ultra and Monster Hydro have the flavors of any WOD you're up to conquer. All right, so now, again, let me preface this. All of these things are unofficial, but let's take a look at our leaderboard. We're going to start in South America.
My hands are sweaty.
On the women's side, we have Julia Cato. She's going to take first unofficially in South America over Luisa Marquez. She also happened to take first in event 5. And this is where we're going to start to see what were these times coming on the women's side. So she actually won event 5 with a 3:20 for that 5th event. Melina Rodriguez rounding out your top 3. As we look to the men's side, Gui Malheiros, no surprise there. Oh, wow. Look at his event 5 time. 2:29 for Gui Malheiros. So he wins the final
my goodness.
2 events. He got second in event number 2. So he wins the total. I think he got, 407-pound clean? Did I see that?
Yeah, I believe he commented and then appropriately said, Rich told me that was enough.
Rich told me that was enough.
Yeah.
But if you
like, all of his lifts, but I listen to the boss man.
He had more in all of his lifts.
Of course.
I guess I was like, well, that was easy.
We've never
and
seen him really
was
maxed
that
out.
The bench? Yeah. It was like, I maxed out, sort of. Not really. Man, I tell you what.
Oh, my goodness.
Not to derail everything that we're talking about, but like Gui Malheiros is, I don't know if I've watched someone that I enjoy just their movement more than Gui. It's so effortless. Like we've been blessed with a lot of amazing lifters over the year. I mean, Matt Fraser being one of them, but I mean, and Rich, another one, just beautiful movers in general.
Yep.
But man, watching Gui lift is just a treat.
It's poetry.
So he takes first overall, 27 points over Augustine Elme and then Nicholas Bidarte as your top 3 in South America. We'll move over to Africa. On the men's side, Mr. Never Die, Jason Smith. I don't know why I'm leaving him for dead, but man, he just hurt my feelings a little bit more. 38, still unofficially claiming first overall. And so let's see what the top event 5 is coming out of Africa for the men. That is a 2:59 on the women's side. First overall is going to be Michelle Morand out of South Africa with 29 points in total. Fastest time on the women's side, Mary Jameson, 4:01 for event number 5. Move over to Asia. Sungyoung Choi, 16 points overall. She gets first overall. She also wins event number 5 at a 3:51 for the men's side in Asia. We'll say overall. Let me click this. Who takes first overall? It's going to be Roman Karenikov with a 10-point win over Alexander Elin. Both athletes actually unable to compete last year, but both qualified for last year's CrossFit Game. Roman is currently in Cookville. Fastest time out of Russia or out of Asia, we have 2:33.
And how many do they take out of Asia, Chase, to their
semi? So they'll take 30.
Yes, okay.
So at the semifinal, and that, I mean, this is tight races. So let's look at the top 30th position coming down to the end. I mean, this is how close it was. Last man in, Dmitry Gurin at 229 total points, and last one out. Again, this is all unofficial. Anatoly Borisenko 3 points back. That's how crazy tight it is. And the hard part here is that they don't know what the scores are, and which, we have a blind leaderboard until they're posted. Yep. Let's go over to Oceania. And on the men's side, Ricky Garrard, unofficial in the quarterfinals, coming out of Oceania, Jay Crouch, Bailey Martin, Baden Brown, Ben Fowler as your top 5. Ricky gets second in event 5. The fastest time we saw was a 2:42 from Jake Douglas. As we move over to the women's side, Tia Toomey had 3 first-place finishes over the first 4 events. The only second-place finish she took was to Cara Saunders. Tia wins at 7 points total unofficially. Cara Saunders in second and Ellie Turner in third. But check this out. Ellie Turner's time of 3:03 was the fastest in Oceania, 5 seconds ahead of Tia Toomey, who takes second. So Tia didn't finish any lower than second place going in. Let's see on the bubble. They're also taking 30 here. Katie Brock, 2:23. Wow. Georgia Auto, 2:24. And again, these are all unofficial, so a lot of things can change. But when you look at that 30th place position in Oceania, 38th place for Katie, and that 79th place, that's what hurt Georgia on the way in. So that is Oceania. Let's move over to Europe. And on the women's side, Gabriella Magawa hangs on for first. I say hangs on. 30 points.
Wow, impressive.
In first place.
Amazing.
As she takes first overall. For the fastest time, Laura Horvath. And at just that 90th place in event 1, takes first in events 4 and event 5. Her time at 3:08. Karin Frey, the second fastest time in event 5. But overall, now they are taking 60 out of this region. Emma McQuaid in second, just 1 point ahead of Jacqueline Dahlstrom. And Sarah Sigmundsdottir holding on to 4th overall. As we scroll down the leaderboard, Karin Frey is up there in 11th. Turi Helgadottir, man, she's so underrated. One of the lost daughters. Turi Helgadottir, 14th, jumped up. Yep. Catherine Davidsdottir is down in 23rd. And as you look at line, which would be 60 on the European side, I know Sam was close yesterday. So where Sam Briggs, officially as it stands right now, outside the top 60. She's currently in 66th. She has 575 total points. Now, when you look at 60th place, which is Silje Tonenson, it's quick math here, is 36 points. So depending on what the scores will be, I don't see Sam actually making it in. Michaela Norman also missing out. She's just 2 spots behind Sam Briggs. But we knew going in, this was going to be a tough event for them to stay in that top 6 with those snatches. I mean, that's just a weight a little bit outside their comfort level. I mean, they can do it, but not at the speed some of these other athletes can. On the men's side in Europe, BKG takes first overall, 135 total points. Willie George in second. Lazar Jukic rounding out your top 3. So those are your top athletes. Fastest time on the men's side in event 5. Of course he did. If you guys haven't heard the name Giannis Papadopoulos, which is one of my favorite names to say,
has to be.
This guy is a beast. Wow. He is so strong. I think I watched him do a 400-pound double shoulder overhead in Dubai one year. 2:25 is the time. Bronislava Lenkowitz behind him at 2:32. Let's look at the overall so far for the men. Again, and they're taking the top 6 because they'll have 2 semifinals in Europe. So that cut line being 60, unofficially held on by Pyotr Mekalekik. Hugo Sousa is the man out, but again, it's only 3 points deciding that. So when things are official, we could have some movement here. I don't see any names that we've seen on the outside looking in. Bronislav Olenkowicz is in 74th. It looks like he'll be too far out of reach unless something drastic happens for him. And Giannis Papadopoulos, actually, look at that. He was outside the top 60 yesterday. And that first place position got him all the way up to 55th. So it looks like he may sneak into your top 60 As we turn our eyes to the North American semifinal, Justin Medeiros takes first place in the quarterfinal, and look who it is, Chandler Smith, unofficially sitting in second overall. Chandler Smith having a lot of heartbreak over the last couple of years, but looking like one of the better off seasons he's had.
I laugh at this because we know from social media, at least, if this tells us the truth, that Chandler Smith did these workouts in like a 12-hour period, all 5 of them. So there you go, Chandler Smith. Yes, he was the best man in a wedding this weekend.
Dang.
So he banged him out Thursday afternoon to like Friday morning and was done.
Wow. Well, I can imagine what you would have done with 3 days to play around with that. Jeffrey Adler in third, Noah Olson in fourth, Scott Panchik. Maybe if I officially announce I'm retired, even though like I did that years ago, maybe I will get more fit.
It could be the trick.
Is Scott? Yeah. Is Scott going to come back? Is Scott? I mean,
hey, listen, he's going to be
good
a
question,
semifinal, right? Like what something.
How could you not?
How could you not? What else are you going to do with all that fitness, Scott?
I know. I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Just sit on the couch? Absolutely not. So Scott Panchik, fifth overall, just one place ahead. Saxon Panchik, Vellner's in the top 10, Griffin Roll, Samuel Quant. Spencer Panchik is sitting in 11th. Let's see what the fastest event 5 drum roll. Anybody? What a drum roll for the fastest one? Matt DeLugos.
Your prediction, bro.
Hey, I thought he would 219, 1 second ahead of 220. Pat Vellner getting third at 232, but a 219. Man, that's
fast.
We weren't sure what the over under was going to be. I actually got to see the video of Matt DeLugos doing that last night, and people shouldn't be able to row that fast. Is all I'm saying. It's just not. It's not natural. So Matt DeLugos, 219. I believe that is the fastest time we've seen worldwide. Again, that time is unofficial. Now, as far as the cut line on the North American side, that's going to be 120 as we scroll over. Raphael Sancton holding on to that 120th position unofficially. And on the outside, he has 1,251 points. At 121, you have Jason Ray, 1 point out. So there, something could happen there. 1 point out, Tucker Nakamore at 1256. So just 5 points out there. Let's see other names as they go through here. So let's look over to the women's side. This will be our last one to look in. And after 5 events on the women's side, unofficially, she won the Open, and she has unofficially won the quarterfinals. Mal O'Brien. I mean, when do we stop being surprised about this? I don't know.
Next year, probably next year, I would assume. I mean, well, yeah, I think next year's the time for her. But goodness, I'm thoroughly impressed, particularly with this score here on Workout 5.
Man, Mal O'Brien 7th in Workout 5 at 3:29. Alexis Raptis 2nd overall. Amanda Barnhart just behind Daniel Brandon. So Daniel Brandon sitting in the top 3, and Brooke Wells. I think we got to spend a second here on Brooke Wells.
100%.
The injury that she sustained at the CrossFit Games, the surgery that she has to go through. I mean, that is a major surgery that requires not just time to heal, but, you know, Margaux, say you're coming off an injury. I mean, unfortunately, you haven't sustained anything to that degree, but any type of setback you have physically, there's a huge trust component with your body that you can only really learn through, I would say, through competition. So, I mean, walk us through how tough that is for an athlete going from something like that injury to back to the competition floor.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because once you start to heal and once you start to improve, it's how fast do you push your body back to where you were at and then supersede that or pass through that. And I think the struggle sometimes is that you don't want to push it too fast, too quickly to re-injure it or possibly irritate it. Kind of like what we saw with Sarah at Wodapalooza. You know, did she possibly re-injure the knee? So I think there's that physical component. But I think the focus should be more on the mental aspect. Like, how are you dealing with that mentally? Is it a struggle? I should be in the gym. I should be doing my PT. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be lifting this weight just yet. I should, give myself a little more time. And of course, a lot of these athletes, I know Brooke has a good supportive network with her sister, her mom, but also the environment and your training crew that you have around you. And that can definitely be helpful. But it's when you're by yourself or when you're thinking, how can I push this faster? Can I get back to where I was quicker? It's that mental component, mental aspect that maybe not many people talk about as often. That is more of a struggle, more so than the physical aspect, because our bodies are capable of a lot. We eventually will get back there. It's knowing the steps and making sure we don't rush, from step 3 to step 7. Just you have to take it at certain times and, follow your protocol, but also know when to push it and then when to kind of like take your foot off the gas pedal. But that mental component is a little bit harder, because there's not necessarily a gauge. We're like, all right, you just squatted 200 pounds. And now we're going to go for 215, where your mindset's a little different. So I think Brooke has been able to have a great supportive network, and she's, getting better, and she's showing that on social media. But I think, again, that mental aspect, when we just see clips of the good, we don't always see clips of the bad. So it's like, how can we get through those struggles and still continue to move forward?
Adrian, how about yourself? We know she heard it during a max snatch. We've had high volume, high intensity, high fatigue snatches in event 5, but we also had a max overhead squat in event 4. If you want to relate it to football, it's like, say you had an ACL that you tore on a cut, right? Or an out or a change of direction. And now you got to get back out on the practice field or the football field and do the same exact movement that injured you in the first place. What's it like just taking that chance to put yourself back out there?
It's extremely difficult. And I'll be honest, I injured my elbow playing football. I was engaged with someone else came and hit my arm, and I tore the MCL in my elbow. I did not need to get it surgically repaired like Brooke did. But I can tell you, I was in a locked out cast for so long, and then getting back the strength and getting back the confidence. And then, like you mentioned, Chase, to be out there again in contact with someone and have the risk of the same thing happening. It's so hard to be outside of your own mind. I will say this about Brooke. I think that what we're seeing is freedom. Brooke being completely free of expectation right now, where she like got this surgery. She's recovering. She's like, I'm going to focus on my recovery. I'm going to do the best I can, of course. But whatever happens, happens. And all of a sudden, we're seeing this young lady just thrive, and we've seen her do amazing things already. But like Margaux, you mentioned about the power of the mind, and if this is her free of worry and just kind of like, yeah, I'm just throwing it out there this year, this could really be one of her best years we've ever seen, as long as physically she continues to be on the course that she's on right now. So I think it's really cool. Again, another one of like CrossFit sweethearts, just captivating us all and having a wonderful story to go with it.
That's a great point, because how much has, say, the media community expectations maybe dictate athletes' own personal goals? Is like, when is Brooke going to win the games? When is Brooke going to be in the podium? Like, that has been her storyline from the media perspective. Now, that's been a goal of hers. Obviously, that's been in the forefront. She believes she is physically capable of doing that. But Margaux, how much pressure, or how much does that change almost your approach to training and competing when you have that expectation looming over you, versus what Adrian said, is that there are no expectations for Brooke for the first time since her rookie year. And maybe that allows her to blossom more.
Yeah, I think those expectations can definitely be detrimental, where if you're giving them more value than you should, then you're starting to focus on that and have that in the back of your mind as you're going into the training, as you're going into competition. And I think it definitely can pull away because you're distracted. You're not focusing at the task in hand. You're not focusing on your training piece or the competition. You're thinking, what story is going to come out because of this, or what are they going to try to say? And it's interesting because, of course, those are elements you can't control. So putting your energy towards things you can't control is not worth it. But it's hard when it's still something you see or hear you talk about, whether it's on social media or news articles or videos, whatever it might be. And so silencing the noise is important, not only for her, but anyone else. And being aware of it, acknowledging it, but then putting it off to the side, because expectations, whether they're expectations from yourself or others, can start to put you in a spot where you're focused more on that and the outcome of that, or what people are going to say, versus what you're actually doing. And so, like Adrian said, being free of that, not worrying about it, it's kind of a sense of relief and, water off your back or water off your shoulder, where you're not worrying about that, and you can be present at what you're currently doing whether that's in the event competition or in the gym training with your community.
I like that. All right, so let's look at the cut line here at 120 for the women's leaderboard in North America. Carly Stone unofficially holding on to that 120th place position at 1,034 points. Above her, Natalie Thompson and Claire Troe at 1031, so just 3 points clear of her. And just below the cut line, Jordan Attic at 137. That's only 3 points. Sierra Tamiland at 1071, so a bit further out of 122. So 121 between Jordan. Again, nothing's official yet. We've seen a lot of changes on the leaderboard. Kelly Jackson, former games athlete, she's at 128. Jessica Kalagian, she's on the outside. And so as that, we'll look to what the fastest event 5 was on the women's side, and Danny Spiegel should not take to that penalty in a workout too very lightly as she comes out and hammers down a 3:03. Freya Moosberger getting second. It's one of Michelle Atundra's athletes that she was heralding as maybe the next Canadian female in line to take the torch between her and Camille. Amanda Barnhart, 3:15. Daniel Brandon, 3:16. So those are your top 4 scores in event number 5. So as we close things out for the quarterfinals, again, nothing's official just yet. The scores will be more official after this weekend on Monday. We look forward to what the semifinals is going to bring. Now, one thing I wish we had is a little bit more detail on the leaderboard, because listen, I know everybody's separated around the world in their semifinal regions, but I want to see a worldwide leader. I want to see who won this event worldwide. Like, I just want to see a little extra detail on the leaderboard. Adrian, how about you?
I completely agree. Listen to our friends over there with all the widgets and the know-how behind creating this side of the leaderboard. If you could give that to us within the next week, we'd sure be grateful. I think it's just a fun part of being able to lay out and even make some predictions into semifinals of who potentially is advancing, even based off of these data points. As we know, one of the coolest things clearly even about our job here behind the cameras now is that when we can quantify things, it gives us some really cool predictors to talk about. And then, hey, another detail I'd like to see, let's throw those specific lift details out for the other total. I want to see what people benched, you know?
Yes.
I don't care what you over a squat. I want to see what
agree.
you're putting up on the bench press. Margaux, how about you?
I just know that breakdown.
Yeah.
100% agree. 100% agree. And it's like you said, it's knowing that breakdown just to kind of see, like, depending on what's coming in the semifinals, depending on whether it's a weight lift or more of a strength movement, like a squat, to be able to have an idea of where these athletes are in each individual lift will be great, because then again, comparison on the worldwide aspect gives you a little more data points. And I think the data points and information going into it allows you to, one, spectate or speculate, but then also kind of anticipate what's coming forward. And I think everyone's curious, right? Curiosity allows us to seek more information out there. So I would love to see those 2 elements for sure included, especially the breakdown of the other total.
And it's not just that. I mean, Adrian, it's not just for us on the media side of it that we want to see more, but like I would say for sure on the athlete side, it's like I want to know if I was the fastest event 1, or I want to know if I had the biggest bench in the world. Like I want to know those details as an athlete. I think that'd be super cool. We've been saying event 5 this whole time of like how nasty it is, how fast can someone go. And it'd be really neat to see, like, you're right. It has no bearing on what the next stage is, right? That part of the leaderboard is funsies. And I realize it's not a click of the button or just a little line of code that someone has there. I'm asking a lot from somebody, but for the fun community side, I think that'd be really cool to see a worldwide leaderboard after the quarterfinals. And maybe that be a fun predictor of what semifinals and maybe games could look like in the future.
I completely agree.
I agree.
I hope somebody gets behind it.
Lay the groundwork.
Someone's out there. Someone way smarter than all of us can can just glean those stats from the site. But I think it'd be really cool to see, what was the heaviest clean worldwide for men and women, the bench, the overhead squat, who had the fastest event 5, who had the fastest row. Like, it would be really neat to just see that across the board just for fun on our side. Well, that will do it for the quarterfinals. Again, nothing is official yet, but they will be official going into next week. And then after that, All eyes are pointing towards semifinals, 10 around the world, 4 North America, 2 in Europe, 1 in Oceania, South America, Asia, and Africa. And then we have a last chance qualifier as we get to the CrossFit Games. But before that, the team semifinals will be going down next week in the same format, and we will be back here with you guys with special guests, breaking down the events, breaking down the leaderboards. Those floor plans will get released on Monday. Then the events will get released on Thursday. So maybe we can get together and speculate prior to the events coming out of what those events can be. So for Adrian Conway, Margaux Alvarez, thank you guys for joining me all weekend. Thank you guys out there for joining us. We hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you guys next week.